Robert Kirkman is a very sick, disturbed, and brilliantly twisted individual, and I'm here for it. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did. If you haven't already, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you'll be the first to know. Gonna be perfectly honest with you, I know Robert Kirkman from The Walking Dead, but I had never heard of this Invincible comic before actually seeing this cartoon, this animated series. It feels weird calling something as bloody and violent and just off the wall as this as a cartoon, but such is life. It's an animated form, that's what it is. Think of this along the lines of The Boys in animated form, which is funny because Seth Rogen's a producer and whatnot, and his team's a producer on this. So it sort of is in the same line of that of thinking about heroes and the price that is paid for having superhero abilities and whether those superhero abilities, what they can do and mean for you in your life and in the rest of the world. And it's fascinating because this cartoon, and I guess the comics does it too, plays tropes on a lot of classic characters that you know, sort of like The Boys does, where you have a one to one of Homelanders like Superman, and you get those matches here. You have an entire team that is just like the Justice League, who you get almost one for one matchup. Each person like, oh, that's like Martian Manhunter, that's like Green Lantern, so on, so on, so on and so forth. And it's fun to sort of pick those out. And the voice cast of this is freaking phenomenal. J.K. Simmons is great. You start hearing Zachary Quinto pop in there. You know, you got Seth. You get Jason Matsukas, who is freaking brilliant. It's just a fun cartoon with a fun, just demented twist and just a great voice cast from top to bottom. Like there's not one person that I think is phoning it in. Jillian Jacobs is great. Stephen Wynn. It's just great. It's a really intense show. Uh, and for me, I will say this: the first episode I enjoyed. I did not love it. It was getting a sort of a slow moving. But that happens whenever you do a first episode. You're sort of putting people in places. You're sort of creating the world and establishing the world, and then the final piece of episode one, which I won't spoil for anybody, just takes it and knocks it out of the park. And you're just like, oh, that's what we're doing with this. Oh, this is very different than what I thought was going to go. And you're like, now I'm in for this ride. And so then every episode sort of ends and then has, it's not really a post credit because it still comes within or right before the credits, but it's basically like the main story ends. Cool, we're not going to give you a 5 minute thing of something else and then bring it all together. I think it's very creative and kitschy. It's sort of almost a little bit of Watchmen too, with the way that it's stylized. I love how every time the opening credit begins with him making fun of, or in some way making fun of, his name as Invincible. It just comes in with the dialogue, and then it just does a hard cut, bring up the title card, and then come back to the show. I think that's fun. It's just something inventive for this particular show. I don't know if that's how the comic runs. If it's like you're reading pages dot dot dot, then Invincible splash page comes up. If that's a one to one, that's smart. I like it. I'm glad I stayed in there. So, for those who don't know, Invincible is about a young man named Mark Grayson who the show opens with him waiting on being able to get his powers. He was told as a kid or somewhere in his childhood that his father was from another planet and that eventually, well, and his mom's from Earth, but eventually he will receive some type of new powers or some type of power set, and he's just waiting for that. Uh, but he's a normal teenager living in a normal life. Sort of picked on a little bit of the nerdy kid group, but once that power set kicks in, his life completely changes, and that's sort of what we is the jump off point for this series. I always sort of dig when new shows give us their first 3 episodes because you can sort of get an establishment and an idea of what the show is going to be. I don't think this is as funny as something like Harley Quinn. I don't think you go in for this being haha funny. You go in for some of the artwork. There's moments where the animation looks just brilliant. There's a part where Omni Man, played by J.K. Simmons, ends up on another planet and it's all shot in red and it's just like, oh, this looks stunning. So some of the fight sequences and animation is brilliant. This is just an overall good show. I don't think it leans too much into comedy. I just think it's a smart. If you like that in your face, violent but sort of meta stuff that The Boys gives you, then you're gonna dig Invincible. It's gonna be right up your alley. Again, like I said, I have not read the comics, but I am now intrigued to read them, and I'm kind of probably trying to read them behind what is actually aired on the episode, just because I don't want to ruin any surprises. I love when I can find some new property where I'm like, I don't know this that well, so anything that happens just knocks me on my ass, and it's like, oh, that's new. Same that happened with me with The Boys, and so I want to read up behind it just to see how close they adapt, and if it's a one to one, or if it's not, what they chose to not translate, or what got switched or changed from paper to screen, or paper to pencil, if you will. Pencil to a different style of pencil. I love this model of getting me amped up enough, getting me excited about stuff, and then releasing an episode per week. It gives me something to look forward to for the week. It happened with WandaVision. It's happening with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think Invincible is now. I like this show enough that I'm in. I'm hooked. So from this point on, every week, I'm going to be waiting for another episode of Invincible, and we will talk about them and discuss them here. From this point on, in the future, I will be spoilery though. So this is the only time that I'm going to be kind of just vague as I possibly can, because I want people to sort of catch up. But once we're in it, we're in it. For my fans who have read the books and Invincible comic books, what did you guys think? Is it on par? Is what you expected from that? If you haven't, what did you guys think? Go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. If you haven't, you can follow us on Twitter at Hollywood80i. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodArtDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that is on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. We are currently doing a buddy film retrospect through the eyes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier with our guest host Jamie Jerick. We also have a sister podcast called You Can't Do That Anymore. We talk about classic films like Gone with the Wind, American Beauty, West Side Story, and look at those films when they came out through the eyes of 2021 and seeing if some of the things that they got away with then they could do today. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.